In Pursuit of Truth, this is your host, Sir Patrick Mack. Boys and girls, keep your hands inside the vehicle and please remain seated at all times. Permanezcan sentados, por favor. After all, you got to retain situational awareness. We got ourselves a spy. I can see you! I can see you. We have now 7,464 subscribers. Wow, 2 just joined in the last 30 seconds. Thanks to both of you. Anyway, I want to thank all of you who've migrated over here to BitChute. We've got some nice numbers up here. We're almost to 10K. At 10K, we should have cake, right? A BitChute celebration extravaganza. Some of you have struggled to get on BitChute, and I want to address this really quick. I got so many emails asking for a code. I don't have that code, and I most certainly cannot email thousands of people to give them a code. Otherwise, I'd never have time to make any videos. But I do understand that you guys are getting it, and I want to thank you, first of all, just for making the effort. The fact that you guys even would follow me to another platform really, really says a lot to me, and I thank you so much for that. So my apologies to those of you who were unable to do that successfully, but please, please, please do not email me. I am not in possession of said code, and I'm definitely not tech support, so you might have to contact BitChute for that, or maybe somebody who knows can comment down below as to how to take care of that. But I'm afraid I don't have that code. I'm not in possession of that. I don't know how to do that. Looks like many of you were able to do that, so thank you very much. For those of you who made the effort and were unable to do that, thank you very much also. Really, really, it does mean a lot to me. And I don't know what to tell you. It's not really the perfect app yet, and I'm not in love with it either. Sometimes it doesn't always upload my videos. The comment section is actually a separate app called Discuss. I think it's meant to be Discuss. It's spelled with a Q instead of a C. But it doesn't work for me either. But this has been the, how should I say, the most successful outside of YouTube as far as platforms for me, consistently being able to upload. Some of these other platforms, you know, it's just kind of hit and miss. One day it'll work and other days it just won't work for me. But this one has worked pretty well, thanks to all of you who've joined me over there. And for those of you who are looking for that code, I don't have your code. Sorry. You want to do Q? I do. Let's do it! First post of the day is 3588, comes in at 11 o'clock. And 18 seconds. We got a Twitter link right here to Sarah A. Carter, who says, "Scandal. What kind of tools and assets could a State Department official have allegedly used to surveil U.S. journalists in #Ukraine? It must have been a matter of #national security to order surveillance of a U.S. citizen, hopefully duly approved by a U.S. court." Well, we all know how far hopefully goes in Washington, but Sarah Carter wrote an article, which is a scarticle, about a scandal. It's a scartolandical. State Department official was monitoring U.S. journalists in Ukraine. Representative Devin Nunes told Sean Hannity on Wednesday that the State Department, it's just a bunch of deep state knuckleheads, was aware of irregular requests allegedly made by former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, to monitor the communications of U.S. journalists in that country. And it's not that long of an interview, but we ain't got time to watch the whole thing. And because I love you, I made a montage.
Oh, it's a montage, because we ain't trying to watch the whole dang thing now.
Now, look, I find it interesting that Pelosi is not even going to bother to try to fight the administration and take this to court. I think that's new information. I'm surprised at that, but that means they really are just racing to get this done. And finally, I think what you're seeing is they're on a sugar high with polls right now. They've got 90% of the media poisoning people. They've got all the tech companies poisoning people. So they read the polls right now and they want to race quickly, as long as it's 50% plus one, to impeach the president. It's like, I think you said, a rocket docket impeachment. That's what they're trying to go for.
Rockets and dockets. So what you're saying is we're trying to just create a fever pitch in the media so that people will think that this impeachment is really a real gig without actually doing any due process? You don't say.
Yeah, so, and that's why I believe if John Solomon's reporting is correct from yesterday, that the Ukrainians had actually reopened this investigation long before Trump had ever even talked to the new Ukrainian president. So that could be ongoing. If you look at all the happenings in Ukraine over the last few years, it's very concerning. I hope they're supposed to bring in the ambassador, the former ambassador to Ukraine, from the United States. She's supposed to come in on Friday. I don't know if she's going to come in or not, but we're kind of looking forward to having her in because, as you probably know, Sean, Pete Sessions, former chairman of the Rules Committee, he sent a letter about her, about concerns about that she was not serving the Trump administration well in Ukraine.
Well,
of course, she was removed. We've seen lots of bragging in the press about how she's going to be the one that really brings down the president.
Translation: she's likely a missing link, and we will likely never see her.
Well, what I can tell you is that we know what Pete Sessions, congressman from Texas, now retired, we know what he had to say. We know that there are people within that were not only Ukrainians but also Americans that worked at the State Department who have raised concerns about this ambassador. That's why she was ultimately removed. We also have concerns that possibly they were monitoring press from different journalists and others,
like Sarah Carter and John Solomon.
Well, what I've heard, and I want to be clear, I think there's a difference. What I've heard is that there were strange requests, irregular requests to monitor not just one journalist, but multiple journalists. Now, perhaps that was okay.
My colleagues might think it's okay.
If you wish to leave, you may.
We know what he had to say.
I don't think that's okay today.
And I'll stay.
We'll work on a date.
Perhaps there was some reason for that it can be explained away. But that's what we know, and that's what we're going to be looking into.
So there you go. Yovanovitch, likely one of our knuckleheads. And we kind of suspected this a while back, but we weren't exactly sure why. And it looks like because she was trying to request some information so that she could get some surveillance going on Sarah Carter and John Solomon. And of course, those are a couple of the trusted sources that Q has constantly referred us to. That's why we always have links to Scarticles and John Solomon articles, right? So I would imagine that at this point, if that's the case, and all of a sudden her name comes up and Republicans are wanting to talk to her, you can probably imagine that Democrats are all of a sudden going to downplay her role. And after they had just previously said that she was going to be the one to bring down Trump, maybe all of a sudden she won't be so important, right? Hint, hint, wink, wink. Well, is that relevant to upcoming D-class events? Yeah, it likely is, because that's a really big deal, right? Signal intelligence, Five Eyes, domestic. Remember, Devin Nunes has long said that a lot of this information that was drummed up in order to create the dossier, in order to basically get these FISA warrants signed off in the first place, was coming from outside official Five Eyes intelligence. And I'm not really a big fan of the Five Eyes intelligence thing in the first place, but this wasn't official, so we knew that it was probably going to be bunk, right? So is it going to be relevant? Yeah, and I would liken it to this. I would look at it like the sport of boxing. If you're a counterpuncher, you really, really want to wait to throw the perfect counterpunch. You want your opponent to be fully extended on their punch, which means you have to wait for them to punch. And that's the hardest thing, because you know it's coming, you know it could hurt, you know it could hit you. But if you really want to be effective, you got to wait, not as they're about to throw the punch, not after they're finished throwing the punch, but as soon as they fully extend their arm, you slip in and pop, 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 because that's when their defense is actually down. And that's precisely what they're doing. Like Nunes said, they're on a sugar high. They're trying to get this pushed through when everything is at a fever pitch, and that would be the fully extended punch that I'm referring to. That's when you really hit them with all this, because when they finally go full-blown stupid on this whole thing and say that we're all in, there's no going back at that point. They don't get to pull the punch. They don't get to feign. They don't get to move. They've already thrown the punch, right? Do you believe in coincidences? Mathematically impossible, 1 of 100? Well, I don't know what the true numbers are. Do you, John? I don't think that's an accurate number. I wouldn't, I love John, but I wouldn't trust him on that one. But anyway, I don't know. I don't know what the numbers are on that. But we just saw that back in July, Q showed us that we knew about this surveillance. So we've known about this for quite some time. Yovanovitch was removed for that purpose. But the narrative suggests nothing is accurately forecasted, and this is simply a big conspiracy theory. And we got loony in the brackets there. Yeah, every media outlet is coming out, and every time they even use the term QAnon, they always have to add the words conspiracy theory, and they never refer Q posts. And that's one of the biggest things that I think, if you're debating your friends, always mention that to them. Look, if you're going to debunk this whole thing, then debunk the Q posts themselves. Don't just debunk people that follow Q, or, you can kind of see how this goes. Kind of like all these knuckleheads over there at New York Times, Washington Post, NBC, ABC, BBC, etc., etc., etc. This whole fake news complex. Why would they attack us if we weren't a real threat? Yeah, if we were just simply another conspiracy theory, those have been online for decades. So why would you even bother? Because it's a real threat. Ask yourself a very basic question. Why is the forum where drops are made under constant attack? Narrative, deplatform necessary because precursor to violent acts posted there prior to carry out. So what Q is talking about here is that they've really gone after the platform that hosts QAnon. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of knuckleheadedry has been happening on all kinds of different forums for many, many different years. So if you want to see all that stuff, you can find it over there on 4chan, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, etc., which is where Q's saying here. Precursor postings occurred on 4chan. Well, the first posts of QAnon actually were on 4chan, then migrated to 8chan, and now to 8kun. We've been following that all the way through. But all of this kind of junk can be found on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, etc., etc. Pushed to the platform. Why only 8chan? Because 8chan hosts Q. And that's why QAnon's not on Facebook and Twitter and Reddit and Instagram. Think it makes sense, right? Bonus question. Ding, 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 ding. Was the time of the posting pre-post actual event? Well, it was pre. We just showed you that, right? It was back there in July 8th of 2019. Now Q refers us to March 20th, 2019. Increase in attacks, deplatform, shill infiltration, MSM, fake MAGA direct, links to terrorism, acts of violence, only demonstrates validity in close proximity to justice. And there's pain in brackets there. We've seen all this, right? We've seen all the deplatforming. We've seen the deplatforming of 8chan itself. And of course, MSM has been constantly feeding us anti-Q news. And again, they don't want to refer to Q posts. They just want to talk about Q people or try to find any links to craziness that they can. And of course, we've seen links to terrorism and violence the same way. This guy, Comello, who murdered Frank Cali. We don't know this guy. He's no prominent QAnon figure. Maybe he does follow QAnon. Maybe he doesn't. We don't know. Seems very strange that he would write Q on his hand, I wanted to murder this guy that is never talked about on Q to show that I believe in Q. Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense, right? None of these stories do. And it only demonstrates the validity of Q. Boomerang. It's all going to come back to him. You're witnessing the largest organized disinformation campaign to ever be perpetuated on the public. And the jacketless Jim Jordan was just saying something very similar like that earlier. Trust yourself. Be free in your thoughts. The Great Awakening. Return power to the people. And this YouTube link here, I will let you look at it on your own. We've seen it many, many times. It takes you to the speech that says this video will get Donald Trump elected. I highly suggest it, if you haven't seen it, that you check it out. It always has new meaning every time you listen to it, but we are not going to play it today. It's been a long time since we've had a non-corrupt president who works on behalf of the American people and not himself. America is no longer for sale. And the POTUS himself just recently said that, and I think that's pretty swell. Let's move on. Post 3589, 15 minutes out to the hour of 11, we get a Twitter link, and it takes you right here, but I took you already here because I got so dang excited. This is Secret Agent on Twitter. It says, wow, hashtag QAnon. John Durham was appointed by Trust Sessions, meaning Jeff Sessions, on October 28, 2017. No, as interim U.S. attorney, later nominated by POTUS as U.S. attorney. QAnon's first archive post is dated the same date, October 28, 2017. I know. So, yes, indeed, that was the first post, October 28, 2017. And we talked about this the other day. This first graphic is from post 3581 from the other day, the 11th of November. where Q is pointing that out. Month, day, Q public campaign initiated. Month, day, Durham initiated. Yeah, what are the odds of that, right? Seems to be pretty unlikely. And of course, this is the first post, if you'll remember. It said Hillary Clinton will be arrested between 7:45 a.m., 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Monday, the morning on October 30th, 2017. And of course, that never really happened, or at least not that we know of, right? We know there was the whole thing about her wearing a boot, and then all of a sudden John McCain was wearing a boot, and everybody was wearing a boot. Shoot, John McCain was wearing a boot on both of his legs, and we were wondering if they had a little ankle bracelet on them, but we never really knew, and that's fair. And that's been one of the biggest criticisms of QAnon has been post number 1. And as this graphic points out, down at the bottom, as a side note, Q later tells us several times that disinformation is necessary. We now understand why. Moves and counter moves confuse the enemy. Disinformation is real. Disinformation is necessary. And it looks like Q is kind of confirming this whole idea here, that likely this very first post here was just a shout across the bow to basically let the deep state know what was going on so that they would react. And if you've been following for really any amount of time, you know that basically Q fires off a few things and the deep state reacts. It isn't so much about what any white hats, if you will, are doing. It's usually not so proactive. It's usually something being released in the media or on QAnon, and then of course the deep state reacts, and that allows us to do the counter punching. But that's indeed what is happening, and it looks like that indeed was the disinformation. Now it says down here, HRC extradition already in motion, effective yesterday with several countries in case of cross-border run. Passport approved to be flagged, effective October 30th at 12:01 a.m. Expect massive riots organized in defiance and others fleeing the U.S. to occur. U.S. military will, or maybe Marines will conduct the operation while National Guard is activated. Proof check, locate a National Guard member and ask if activated for duty October 30th across most major cities. All right, well, that may never happen, but that would be a pretty big response too. And if it's something that big and that major, I don't imagine that you'd want to flag it on 8chan, or I guess at that time 4chan, right? Pretty big disinformation. And of course, this has sparked a series of moves and counter moves over the last couple years. We've all been watching this play out. But we can all imagine, I think at this point, I'm not so sure we're going to see one day where everybody gets rounded up. And I may be very wrong on that. Either way, disinformation is necessary, right? Q says, what are the odds of that? Well, I'm not really sure. What are the odds of that, John? 5. The odds are 5. Mathematically impossible seems like it, right? Look, for this appointment to happen on the very same day as the Q post, I suppose it's possible. I suppose there's a 1 in 365 chance. I don't really know about that, but I think that we've seen enough Q proofs, like the very one that I just showed you in the beginning in regards to Sarah Carter and John Solomon. We know that this is mathematically impossible, and they know it's mathematically impossible. Coincidence? The truth is right in front of you. Also, In Pursuit of Truth is in front of you right now. So what are the odds of that? Probably 5. Post 3590, 54 minutes after the hour of 11, we've got a link. Read carefully. Reread carefully. Don't screw it up. Well, I'm going to try not to screw it up. This is a letter from July 20th, 2017 from Chuck Grassley of Iowa to the Honorable Rod J. Rosenstein. We're not going to read the whole thing. I highlighted a few spots here. According to news reports, during the 2016 presidential election, Ukrainian government officials tried to help Hillary Clinton and undermine Trump, and did so by disseminating documents implicating a top Trump aide in corruption, and suggested they were investigating the matter. Ukrainian officials also reportedly helped Clinton's allies researching damaging information on Trump and his advisors. At the center of this plan was Alexandra Chalupa, described by reports as a Ukrainian-American operative who was consulting for the Democratic National Committee and reportedly met with Ukrainian officials during the presidential election for the express purpose of exposing alleged ties between then-candidate Donald Trump, Paul Manafort, and Russia. And remember, Paul Manafort got wrapped up in all of this. What did he have on everybody, and why did they put him away? Look, they didn't treat anybody the way they treated Manafort. They went and basically threw away the key on this guy, and we haven't heard. Why is that? Does he know something? Hint, hint, wink, wink. We move on. Chalupa's actions appeared to show that she was simultaneously working on behalf of a foreign government, Ukraine, and on behalf of the DNC and Clinton campaign in an effort to influence not only the U.S. voting population, but U.S. government officials. Alrighty. According to documents provided to the committee, the Justice Department required the Podesta Group and Mercury LLC to register under FARA, being the Foreign Agents Registration Act, for working on behalf of the Ukrainian government. Their registration was required even though the client, the European Center for the Modern Ukraine, okay, so that sounds like George Soros territory, right? Aside from the apparent evidence of collusion between the DNC, Clinton campaign, and Ukrainian government, Chalupa's actions implicate the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA. Yeah, exactly. So this is essentially what they got Tony Podesta on and Paul Manafort, and I wish they would get Chesa Boudin, who is the new DA in San Francisco, out there. I pointed out in my Weatherman video that this was another one that had failed to register. So there you go. Q goes on to say spy insertion EC. I can't even imagine who that might be. Eric Cartman, maybe. Known? Reread drops regarding spy insertion. Well, I think we're starting to get the point, right? What do these people all have in common? You got Nancy Pants Pelosi's son. He's got himself an energy business. So does Kerry's son. So does Romney's son. And so does Biggity Biden's son. Hint, geolocation Ukraine. Yeah. How convenient is that? And of course, this is where this is all centered. And while for a while we were all saying Russia, 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 it turns out that it looks to be Ukraine, Ukraine, Ukraine. Hint, energy. Coincidence? I think not. I think it's pretty easy to see how this all works. And of course, energy is such a big business, and you can be so vague about it that's likely the reason they chose that area, right? Because you can get so much money funneling through there for your consulting gigs or whatever. None of these people know anything about energy. They've got terrible energy. And speaking of terrible energy, George Soros. When George Soros calls, D's always answer. D's nuts. Nothing can stop what is coming. Nothing.
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
Post 3591, 32 minutes after the hour of 1, we get a YouTube link right here. Q says, follow the family. Well, we could follow the link. It takes us here to NRG Lab and new technology. And that's clever because if you put the letter NRG together and say it fast, it says it's energy. In September of 2010, Viscoil Corp LLC was invited to attend the X Prize Foundation's annual competition held in Washington, DC. All right, outstanding. Well, I can't play you the video here, but I can just drag the cursor along, and oh, what do we see right here? That's Nancy Pants Pelosi right there in the darn commercial. That's going to be tough for plausible deniability. Anyway, there's her son, Paul Pelosi Jr., and he says, hi, I'm Paul. I'm a member of the management team of Viscoil Group of Companies and NRG Lab, and it's creative because it means energy. I'm interested in developing clean energy that can replace gasoline and diesel as transportation fuel sources. We've got another green cat over here. Outstanding. So, we've seen this going around actually on Twitter for a couple of months. Somebody dug this up, but boy, oh boy, that's you might want to put a little club soda on that, Paul. Post 3592, 4 minutes after the hour of 2, we get a Washington Times link. And again, Q says, follow the family. It takes you right here. Company co-founded by Nancy Pelosi's son, charged with securities fraud. This is from July of 2014. The SEC charged a company co-founded by Paul Pelosi Jr. with fraud on Wednesday after learning that 2 convicted criminals were running the business. Paul Pelosi Jr., the son of House Minority Leader Nancy Pants Pelosi of California, was the president and chief operating officer of Natural Blue Resources Incorporated, an investment company he co-founded that focuses on environmentally friendly ventures. It's amazing how environmentally friendly all these people are. The SEC charged 4 individuals with fraud, including former New Mexico Governor Tony Anaya, and suspending trading in the company's stock. Pelosi owned over 10 million shares in the company in 2009. Wait a minute. Pelosi owned over 10 million shares in the company in 2009. The SEC said Wednesday the company was secretly controlled by James E. Cohen and Joseph Corazzi, both of whom had previous fraud convictions. Corazzi violated federal securities laws and was barred from acting as an officer or director of a public company. Cohen was previously incarcerated for financial fraud. Outstanding. Now, I also want to memorize you of this. This was from 2019 in February. U.S. Embassy pressed Ukraine to drop probe of George Soros group during the 2016 election. And I just want to cruise through this real quick here. But this group was known as the Anti-Corruption Action Center. The focus on ANT-AC, whose youthful street activists famously wore Ukraine and F corruption t-shirts, was part of a larger probe by Ukraine's Prosecutor General's office into whether $4.4 million in U.S. funds to fight corruption inside the former Soviet Republic had been improperly diverted. Now, we talked about this a little bit before, but the person who squashed this whole thing, oddly enough, is right down here. A few months later, Yuri Lutsenko, widely regarded as a hero in the West for spending 2 years in prison after fighting Russian aggression in his country, was named Prosecutor General and invited to meet new U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch. Lutsenko told me he was stunned when the ambassador gave me a list of people whom we should not prosecute. The list included a founder of the ANT-AC group and 2 members of the parliament who vocally supported the group's anti-corruption reform agenda, according to a source directly familiar with the meeting. Alrighty. So there you go. Democrats and their families all seem to be falling in line for Ukraine. And of course, if you did any investigating into any misdeeds, they would have you look the other way. There's been a lot of money wrapped up in these energy companies, and we know that that gets slush funded out to all sorts of other efforts, whether it be fixing elections or getting people into office or simply blackmailing people. But either way, tons and tons of money were going through these energy companies. And now that this is starting to come out, it'll be interesting to see if they call this Yovanovitch at all. Like I said, I have a feeling the Democrats will want to back out. But George Soros has publicly stated that he really wants to he claims that he wants to support Ukraine, but what it really seems like is that he really wants to destabilize Russia. And I have a sneaky suspicion, and this is just my own suspicion, that at some point Putin, if given the chance, may do Ukraine very much like he did Crimea. But that's a story for another day. But either way, Ukraine was definitely a deep state proxy, much more sophisticated than, say, a North Korea or a Syria or Iran. But it definitely was, and a lot of that money was moving by way of George Soros for a lot of people, but he seems to be a big mobilizer there. Let's move on to 3593. Now we have duplicate posts here, 3593 at 9 minutes after the hour 5, and again 21 minutes after the hour 5 and 3594. And this appears to be Ephesians 10 through 17. Q has posted before 10 through 18. Seems to have lost the last line there. But let's go ahead and read this from 3593. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything to stand, stand firm then with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted in the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. And then Q says, prepare for God and country, for humanity we fight. So sounds like Q is letting us know that something big is coming up. We are indeed not just working against a bunch of corrupt politician knuckleheads, but in evil. We are dealing with sincere evil. We've seen this before. Now, I'm not really sure what the significance of leaving off verse 18 was, but like I said, Q has left it on before. And I thought that was curious. And if you look over here, this YouTube link, it takes you to a music page of a future world music. And their music is called Victory of Life Volume 11 Preview. I'm not going to play that for you because I'll probably get hit with copyright, but you can check it out on your own. It might be just some, pumping up music. I didn't really see anything other than some, kind of decent images and stuff like that going through the video. You got this big angel here. But I do want to point out that the term angel might become very significant in the upcoming weeks. Just a thought from Mystic Mac that we might, very much like we've been hearing about dogs and deer and all that, we might start hearing some other terminology regarding angels. Just a pro tip from a not very pro person. So there are your Q posts, Patriots. One more final thought in regards to that Bible verse. Noticing that Q probably conspicuously left off that verse 18. Maybe Q is drawing our attention to 6:10:17, as in Ephesians 6:10 through 17. Could it be 6:10:17, June 10th, 2017? Right around then, Jeff Sessions was testifying to the Senate Intel Committee in regards to Comey's leaks. So could that be a little surprise that might be coming up? Not really sure. You guys can let me know down below. But I was speaking about these cryptic dog and deer tweets, and I've got one for you right here. This was from a few days ago from CBS News. The elusive fanged mouse deer caught on camera after disappearing for almost 30 years. Well, if you've been following me on Twitter, you know that we've been seeing, of course, a million dog tweets. But recently, we've been seeing all these really strange deer tweets. And here we've got this little pygmy doe from Vietnam. Probably can't drive very well. No, I'm just being serious. Anyway, look who retweeted it. Mark S. Zaid. Yeah, and he is the lawyer for a certain person whose name I can't say. You'll have to figure it out for yourself. But we also got this from Donald Trump yesterday. This is a phony show trial. There is zero due process, none. It is yet another fraudulent hoax conspiracy theory. It is another witch hunt. This is what the socialist Democrat Party has become. There's not one thing the Democrats have done in the past 3 years except try. How about that? That's an odd misspelling just after all these knucklehead reporters have been talking about deers and does. Anyway, you decide. All right, kids, that's all I got for you for now. Quick side note, Michael Avenatti looks like he's going to have his indictment edited. He's not going to go away for conspiracy charges, but he's not quite off the hook for wire fraud in his little deal with Nike and his extortion case. So it should be very interesting to see how this turns out. But that's all I got for you for today. As always, if you like this video, please click like, share, and subscribe. Thanks to all of you who do that already. If you're new to my channel, welcome to you. Please understand that you're going to get unclicked and unnotified and unsubscribed, and YouTube is doing their best to make sure that I no longer stay on YouTube. So you might want to check out one of my alternate links down below in the video description to my Gab, my BitChute, my Twitter, my DropSpace, and my Brighteon.com. It's all down below. The links are all down below in the video description. And my P.O. box is down there if you want to send something old school. If you want to send me some information, please email me. Do not DM me on Twitter or on social media. I don't read my DMs, so I won't be reading you. Please email me. That's down below. And if you'd like to support the channel, my Patreon is linked down below. Thanks to all of you who migrated over to BitChute. I know it's not the easiest thing. And for those of you who are trying, keep trying. I really, really do appreciate it. All right, kids, this is Sir Patrick Mack. And until next time, stay focused.